Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So Vanity Fair have published an article which doubles down on their first article about everything that we're going to see in Amazon's The Lord of the Rings of Power series, which comes out in September later this year. What they first said in that article, I've covered in multiple videos and in articles on Geeks and Gamers. You can go check them out. I'll put those links in the description. But what I've said in those ones, I broke down everything that they put into that article and everything that goes against the lore that Tolkien wrote. And you can see that in that article. I've given examples from the books, from Tolkien's own works, and now Vanity Fair wants to double down by publishing another article which goes into some of the controversies that people even asked about, hey, this isn't the right character that's supposed to be in this time period. Anyway, they've doubled down on it, and let's take a look at what they've had to say, and let's break down with facts and lore what they've had to say. So here's the new article, 10 burning questions about Amazon's The Rings of Power. So this is the showrunners, JD Payne and Patrick McKay, which we've covered before in that last article. Last week, Vanity Fair exclusively unveiled the first look at a number of characters and locations for Prime Video's The Lord of the Rings of Power series. J.R.R. Tolkien fans got another good look at this new Middle-earth story when the first teaser debuted during the Super Bowl this Sunday, which I had a live reaction to, and I put a video up. You can check that out as well. Now, showrunners Patrick McKay and JD Payne offer up even more details and insights and answer some of the more urgent questions Tolkien fans have been asking about the series set in Middle-earth's Second Age. More urgent questions Tolkien fans have been asking are, how about talking about backlash that the fans have been putting upon Amazon and that they've been receiving, because a bunch of other people on YouTube have been doing videos on how this trailer and teaser has been downvoted on a bunch of different Amazon YouTube pages and channels. So there's not just a couple of questions, it's a dislike ratio on the video, on the trailer, and there's a bunch of comments that people are going through. They're saying one of Tolkien's quotes about evil cannot create, it can only destroy. You can go check those videos out from other people. So they're kind of addressing the backlash that's come in from people that are telling Amazon, hey, this isn't right. Now, let's take a look at these specific points that we're going to address. So in creating this new story, McKay and Payne's goal was, in McKay's words, different but familiar. While the series is not a precise continuation of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, it shouldn't clash with the cinematic world fans have come to know and love. It shouldn't clash because the time periods are not the same, but it's going to clash because now what you're telling me right here is they want these actors like Morfydd Clark and Robert Aramayo, Elrond and Galadriel. They were cast because they could age into their older versions played by Cate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving from the original trilogy. And even Benjamin Walker, who now plays Gil-galad, who was in the trailer, he bears a striking resemblance to Mark Ferguson, who played Gil-galad in the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring. So they're trying to link up these by having the actors look kind of the same or have the actors grow into the roles. But it's worth remembering, if only for legal reasons, this is not the exact same world. The production design, though similar, is not trying to match Jackson's films. For example, King Elendil's legendary broken sword Narsil, which debuted on one of the Prime Video's promotional posters, which is this one here. So that's supposed to be Anduril, Flame of the West. I don't think so. What do they say? Does not look identical to the one eventually reforged and used by Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn in The Return of the King, which is this one here. Okay, nothing alike. But you can even see that in Fellowship of the Ring. What did the sword look like? And no. So the Amazon show has an advantage that its prime locations like Numenor, elven cities of Lindon, Eregion, and the intact dwarven city of Khazad-dûm didn't play into Jackson's films. No, they didn't. So in this one, it goes into what Peter Jackson did use and didn't use, and why great landmarks like the Tower of Barad-dûr, the massive Eye of Sauron, because it hasn't been built yet in this time, neither has the Black Gate of Mordor or the Doors of Durin, where they enter Moria. Here's where we kind of get a crossover. So it says the Rings of Power costume designer Kate Hawley, who worked on Jackson's Hobbit films. So she worked on The Hobbit, and she is creating Middle-earth fashions that existed thousands of years before Liv Tyler, where you saw Arwen in her endless velvet, what they say. So this next bit is why I believe the trailer had the aesthetic of Lord of the Rings, but not the substance. Hawley isn't the only overlap between the Jackson era and this one. John Howe, a beloved conceptual designer who worked on the film, lent his talents to the Rings of Power. So, John Howe, look at his beautiful artwork that he used and created for Lord of the Rings, and even The Hobbit too. Now, his artworks were pretty much the basis of what Lord of the Rings came to look like on screen. So, it stands to reason that when you see in the trailer, the new teaser here for the Amazon, the aesthetic looks perfect. I would say the aesthetic looks perfect, but in the substance in the trailer, no. So, it's understandable when you see things like the settings we have here can look just like John Howell would have drawn up. And that makes sense. When you have John Howell, who basically created the art for Lord of the Rings, the movies, to have him creating the same things and making it the same look as it does in the trailer here for Amazon's Rings of Power series. It says, we were very lucky to have some alums that had experience in Middle-earth come back in. So interestingly, it says, we reached out to Peter Jackson, but between COVID and his schedules and our schedules, didn't manage to actually ever get together for coffee, but certainly would love to at some point. Now it says, our only relationship is as big fans and admirers. So it says their influences were here, Led Zeppelin, Hobbit cartoon back from the day, and there's Galadriel crossing the Helcaraxi. All right. Interestingly, it goes over what a lot of people were saying in their teaser trailer reactions, that it was CGI heavy. Because, as you can see here in the trailer, clearly look beautiful styling and art, but when you get to something like this, you can tell CG heavy, and then images like this where she's crossing the Sundering Seas, you know, it's CG heavy. This is what it relates to. There are plenty of innovative digital effects in the Rings of Power. There's been a recent movement led by Lucasfilm and Star Wars, both in genre filmmaking and its fandom, away from an over-reliance on digital effects. Well, because I know Lucasfilm was using for Mandalorian this new virtual set, which has like the background has everything all set so the actors can already see it. So this is why they didn't use it. So it says they had a keen interest in practical effects and real world locations. However, they wanted to shoot Khazad-dûm, the dwarven mining city, under an actual mountain in New Zealand. However, the practicalities of getting 300 crew members just wasn't a possibility, they said. So they had to build it on a soundstage. And then also, something if you remember from The Hobbit that was very hard to film. Ian McKellen, when he was playing Gandalf in The Hobbit, he said he was almost thinking of quitting acting because this was so hard to film. So when you've got someone who's a lot larger, like Gandalf, who is a wizard, interacting with characters like dwarves or hobbits, in The Hobbit, it was very hard. So what they had to do is build two sets, and Ian McKellen had to basically act by himself in an empty room with lights popping up when someone was supposed to be talking in the scene. And it's very, very hard to do because your timing's got to be on, and it's very hard. So what they said was, do you know what the single most complicated scene you've ever written in season 1 is? They said it's a scene in which the elf and the dwarf walk down a hallway together. It's hard to force that perspective when you've got someone who's this big and someone who's supposed to be this big, but they're actually both the same height in reality. So what they did in Lord of the Rings was they did forced perspective. So when you had Gandalf and Frodo sitting together on the chair, it looked like they were this close, but in reality they were sitting like far apart from each other. And they did that in a few scenes where it was Gandalf and Frodo sitting together. So they used forced perspective in Lord of the Rings, but in The Hobbit they used this kind of double filming range because there was so much going on, and they had to splice the two scenes together, so it made one seamless dinner scene. So McKay says you have to shoot everything twice, and then they talk about the problems where you have to time everything right. So let's talk about the next part, which is one of the main things, which is the source material. What exactly is the source material here? So what did Amazon buy? They said we have the rights solely to the Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King, the Appendices, and the Hobbit. And that's it. We do not have rights to the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, History of Middle-earth, or any of those other books, like The Nature of Middle-earth, which details and explains the nature of Middle-earth, basically, like from races to places, everything else in between in Middle-earth. They said it takes a huge chunk of lore off the table and has left Tolkien fans wondering how this duo plans to tell a Second Age story without access to those materials. 100%, which is what I've been saying in my previous videos. They can't use Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, all these other books to tell this story that lasts thousands of years. They can only use the appendices, which basically details kind of a bullet points of what happened in those times, in those ages. So it's going to be very hard. So what do they say? There's a version of everything we need for the Second Age in the books we have the rights to. As long as we're painting within those lines, which you're not, and not egregiously contradicting something we don't have the rights to, which you are. You creating new characters out of nowhere. You're putting characters who we'll see who didn't have an effect on these things that you're actually putting into pivotal moments and scenes in the point of the story. You're completely changing it. So you are egregiously contradicting something that you don't have the rights to. They say there's a lot of leeway and room to dramatize and tell some of the best stories Tolkien ever came up with. And then they're saying some of the other things they base it off was some songs and stuff. Right here, it says, we worked in conjunction with world-renowned Tolkien scholars, which you fired, and the Tolkien estate to make sure that the ways we connected the dots were Tolkienian and gelled with the experts and the estate's understanding of the material. So let's get into the minute details, which this one right here is one. Did Vanity Fair make an error in calling the Dwarven Prince Durin the Fourth? Now we're going to take a look at the book because of what they said here. Nope, the red-bearded Owain Arthur, photographed in Vanity Fair's deep dive into the Rings of Power, is Prince Durin IV, but Tolkien scholars will cry out it was Durin III who was given one of the Rings of Power by Sauron. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the book. So this above me is the explanation given in the Unfinished Tales, and it says, in Appendix A to Lord of the Rings, so the appendices are what they're using, it is said that there was a belief among the dwarves of Durin's folk that the Ring of Durin III, King of Khazad-dûm, was given to him by the elven smiths themselves and not by Sauron, but nothing is said in the present text about the way in which the seven rings came into possession of the dwarves. So it doesn't say how they got them, but it says who was given the ring, which says the Ring of Durin III, right here, King of Khazad-dûm. So let's let them explain what they are doing. King Durin III is also in the show and is portrayed by someone who knows something about playing a bad dad. What are you talking about? In Tolkien's works, Durin III and IV are not father and son, and the title of Durin is more complicated than just a name. But remember that McKay and Payne are compacting thousands of years of Tolkien's Second Age down in one shortened timeline. Because they have to compact the story because it's too long to take thousands of years to tell a story and characters are going to die and you're not going to get through the story that they want to tell that Tolkien never wrote, which is what they said. Now, this one I've talked about multiple times. I talked about it in my stream, a video you can check out. What's the deal with this elf and human romance? Tolkien fans may still be scratching their heads over the interspecies love triangle in the Hobbit trilogy between Legolas, Tauriel, and Keely, which I've talked about in another video, which was, ridiculous in its own right with the Hobbit. Now, it says it was an invention of Peter Jackson's and an effort to add romance to the almost entirely romanceless story of The Hobbit, which Warner Brothers themselves mandated. Just saying. But forbidden romances across cultures, though rare in the Middle-earth record, are of particular fascination to Tolkien. Two of his most famous lovers, Beren and Luthien, as well as Aragorn and Arwen, are human-elf pairings that crossed boundaries and defied conventions to be with each other. Now, I've done a video on this already. It says there were 3 unions between the Eldar and the Edain. There were 3 unions. 3, okay? There was Beren and Luthien, Aragorn and Arwen, and Idril and Tuor. Now, who are Beren and Luthien and Idril and Tuor? Let's take a look. You have someone playing Elrond in this show. So can we take a quick look at Elrond and his family lineage? Here we go, down the bottom. Elrond and Elros. So that's it there. And then there's Arwen right below. So in one family lineage, he has the 3 unions between Eldar and the Edain. Because Arwen and Aragorn, so that's his daughter. Then there is Idril and Tuor right here, which are his grandparents. So Elrond's grandparents. And then you also have on the other side, with his mother's side, Beren and Luthien as his great-grandparents. So what does Vanity Fair put in? Let's take a look. You could argue that the rarity of these love stories, along with the lesser-known one between Andrith and Agnor, is what makes them special. They want to talk about Andrith and Agnor. Okay, just quickly, let's break down what it says. Andrith was deeply in love with Agnor, son of Finarfin. The love was returned, but never fulfilled, since Agnor departed from motives of wisdom as he felt his coming death. Thus they never married, and had no children. Yes, they may have loved each other, but it wasn't a union because, as I've shown in the book, it says there were 3 unions. So why are you using this one? I have no idea. This is just showing that it's more law breaking. They don't even care about the law. They don't care that it says there's 3 unions between the Eldar and the Edain. And they've used 2 of those 3 that are explained, but they're not using the 3rd one. They're using this other one, which wasn't fulfilled. And then in regards to the one that they're talking about here, that would make this a wholly fabricated 4th union, which goes outside the law. It's got nothing to do with Ishmael Cruz Cordova, the person who's playing him, his skin color or whatever, his race. This has got to do with the race in the book. And it's egregious because you said you wouldn't make egregious law breaks. Here, right here. So it says, as long as we're painting within those lines and are not egregiously contradicting something we don't have the rights to. So you know where it says there are 3 unions between the Eldar and the Edain? Well, it says it in the Lord of the Rings appendices. So they're taking something that they do have the rights to and egregiously changing the story to fit their own narrative now. So they're going to take whatever they have their hands on and they're going to change whatever they want. So the only way that they can get out of this is if they do the same thing with the other relationship and they don't get married or have kids in this one, so that they don't become a union. You don't care about what you're making and that you're breaking every single thing to make it. And then we get to, this sounds like a lot of made up story. What of Tolkien's can we expect? Exactly. See, this is what people are saying. You're making up everything you want going along and not sticking to the story. And then what do they say? The truth is, it's all here. We told Amazon we wanted to do 4 or 5 stories that are the big epics of the Second Age, because this is going to last, 5 seasons. So that's why those actors who are going to be playing Elrond and Galadriel are going to grow into their characters, apparently, because it's going to be 5 or so seasons. So who knows how many years that's going to be if it continues. So they're starting with the forging of the rings. At the center of that origin is the famed elven smith Celebrimbor, who forges the rings on the will of Anatar, because he was deceived. So it's Anatar is actually Sauron, and Aramas's younger Elrond. In Eregion, Elrond is working to rebuild damaged alliances with the dwarves, including with his old friend, Prince Durin IV. We're going back thousands of years to when the party was in full swing. We're going to see the elf capital of Lindon, where Elrond is a young up-and-coming operator within the political scene. What are you talking about, up-and-coming operator within the political scene? Let's just take a quick breakdown of what happened to Elrond in the First Age and the Second Age. So First Age, he was born late in the First Age. So then by the end of the First Age, which was at the end of the War of the Wrath against Morgoth, eventually Elrond and Elros had left their nominal captivity, because they were taken, and traveled to Lindon, which is in the west. Elrond chose to be counted among the elves, because his brother wanted to be counted among men. So Elrond remained in Lindon as captain and herald of Gil-galad, the High King of the Noldor. So in the trailer, it shows Gil-galad for a brief second, and then it also says, in the time before the king, in the teaser. Well, we know you're talking about King Aragorn, but you're talking about time before the king. But you're talking about when you had a second in the trailer, where you had the High King of the Noldor in that trailer. Gil-galad, he's the High King. God damn it. So what else did Elrond do? He was sent to Eregion. He got there late and Sauron's army defeated them. And then he went to found Rivendell at the Misty Mountains, which we see Rivendell a bunch of times in The Lord of the Rings and in the Hobbit movies. So there's not really much about his political career in the Second Age, which is what we're going to see apparently in this show. So then they're talking about how they want to focus on the rise of Sauron himself when he was playing a physical villain. No idea who might be playing the Dark Lord in his younger, more seductive phase, which is Sauron the Deceiver as Anatar. And then we're talking more about Halbrand, a completely new character that was never in the lore. And then they say if they do it right, it's the Easter egg phenomenon that people really like with this kind of stuff. No, you know what people like? Getting the damn story right. And not, as you said, egregiously contradicting something you don't have the rights to. Oh my god. If people who thought this was going to turn into Game of Thrones had any doubt, here we go. Tolkien scholars will know that complicated clashes over succession to the Númenórean throne between characters Tamriel and Ar-Pharazôn, the island's last king, will allow Payne and McKay to explore the kind of dangerous palace intrigue that made the best of Game of Thrones so compelling. God damn it. And then they want to say how they'll have Isildur. Yeah, we already saw there's going to be a younger Isildur in this. There's even more about Galadriel, but we've already shown you in previous videos about Galadriel. She was not called the commander of the armies of the north, which is what they're calling her in this show. You know what? If they're going to say, in the unfinished tales, it says Galadriel looked up to the dwarves also with the eye of a commander, seeing them in the finest warriors to pit against the orcs. You can't use the unfinished tales. You just said you can't use the unfinished tales. Is that where they're taking the commander of the armies of the north from? She looked upon them with the eye of a commander. Doesn't mean she was a commander. It means she was powerful. She was the most powerful female elf of all time. She didn't need a sword. She used magic. God. And then look at this. This is literally pissing on the character. She's full of piss and vinegar, and she's got a sword that's broken because she's killed so many orcs. McKay says of their version. This young hothead Galadriel, how did she ever become that elder stateswoman? I don't know, read the freaking book. Oh, that's right, you can't. You're not allowed to use it. What are you talking about? Having already survived multiple attacks by Sauron and his predecessor. She says, I've shown in previous videos, she says she didn't take part in the war against Morgoth because it wasn't approved by the Valar. So she didn't... No, there will not be wizards. They weren't there in that age. Should fans be worried? Here we go. Let's end with fans be worried. Fans will always be worried. That's the nature of adapting something as beloved and enduring as The Lord of the Rings. McKay and Payne can relate. But it's important to remember that Tolkien himself envisioned a number of different people telling stories in his world. Now, this is one from Bounty and Comics where they actually have one of Tolkien's letters in which he took issue with someone's adaptation to Lord of the Rings. So they said back in the day, he has cut the parts of the story upon which its characteristic and peculiar tone principally depends, showing a preference for fights, and he has made no serious attempt to represent the heart of the tale adequately, the journey of the ring bearers. So I believe that this is what Tolkien would have said about this. This is my opinion, that Tolkien would have said about this. They are not making a serious attempt to represent the heart of the tale of the Silmarillion, because it says they've egregiously contradicted something that they didn't have the rights to, so they're not even supposed to touch it. They're not making a serious attempt to keep up with the stuff that they do have the rights to, which is the appendices. And this video is getting way too long, and I think that I've given enough examples and details in this video and previous videos you can check out as well, that Amazon is absolutely going to destroy this. They are already destroying this. I've been called racist for pointing this out, but this has got nothing to do with the race of the characters that they're bringing in. That's already one thing. This is about the work that is created and the things that Amazon are doing to change it because they want to write something else that Tolkien never wrote, which is what they said. And they're going to make it into a Game of Thrones style battle when the Numenorians have to decide who wants to be king. I don't know what else to tell you. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget to smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel, please, if you have not already. Share this video out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much. Later.